Hello and welcome. I'm Miguel Edwards with 5M Consulting, and we are here live in Vegas at ITC, and we are at the Live at ITC Vegas set, sponsored by Tint. I'm happy to be joined here by Anthony Habayeb of Monitaur. And Anthony, thank you so much for joining us. And we're going to talk about a topic that is talked a ton about here in Vegas, AI. But we've got a slightly different take on it. And in our conversations a couple of weeks ago, you really opened my eyes to some really amazing things that, as a former CIO, I hadn't even thought of. So let's dive right in, and let's start by setting the stage for Monitaur and the product in terms of what you bring to the table. Let's just give our audience just a kind of a grounding and a level set.
Awesome. Good to be here. I did enjoy our conversation a couple of weeks ago. So I'm Anthony Habayeb. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Montar, and we are an AI governance solution for the insurance industry.
Excellent. Fantastic. So as you think about that governance framework, talk a little bit about the importance and a little bit of a leading question in here. What's missing in a lot of our thinking as we think about AI and AI adoption?
Started the company in 2019, well before all of this talk, right? As you walk around the floor here, everybody has AI as a headline, right, in their booth. And in 2019, the opinion I had was I saw no future where AI is going to be used in high stakes situations.
Right.
And there wasn't good governance and auditability and assurance around it. Here we are in 2024, and it's still early. In 2019, it was very early, and now it still is. And I think that, generally, people are interested in the problem.
Mm-hmm.
But as you probably appreciate as a CIO, there's an alignment challenge on this topic. Who owns this?
Right.
Who makes the decision about the strategy? Who executes it? Is it a CIO problem? Is it a legal? Is it a risk? Is it a compliance? And I think where most of the market is right now is it's sort of an everybody problem, which makes executing really hard, right? And so I think, a lot of folks are still learning, but it's good. I think we all recognize, colloquial we, right?
Mm-hmm.
This is important, that if we're going to use AI to make decisions within this industry that impacts consumers in our business, we need to be thoughtful about how we do that.
That makes a lot of sense. Yeah, you remind me of, I had a boss that once told me, when one person is accountable, no one is accountable, right? If they're not, if that one person is not accountable. Fantastic. So what do you say to some of the smaller carriers that are out there, some of the smaller insurance organizations at large that are out there? We're not developing any AI ourselves, Anthony. I don't know that I need to worry about this. Is there still a need for me to be thinking about AI governance, even if I'm not doing my own in-house development per se?
Absolutely. I think one of the really interesting things about insurance on this problem space is this industry runs on models.
Yeah.
Right. It's an industry built on models, with actuaries being the model builders, right?
Yeah.
And as you really think about that, we've already have many critical modeling systems making decisions for our business.
Sure.
And in general, we haven't necessarily invested in how to better watch those applications, test those applications. How could we streamline the sort of documentation and review process, even reserving models as an example.
Sure.
Right. And so maybe a carrier may not be very far in their AI specific journey, but they already have models, and most of their vendors are now also posturing, I use AI in the delivery of service. And if you look at the sort of regulatory environment around AI in the US in particular, the expectation of carriers is you need to be responsible for the AI, not just that you build, but that you're also buying.
I love that.
And how do we ask questions of vendors? So I think we're really at a place where anyone who's running an insurance company, or even if you're a vendor selling to insurance, you need to form an understanding of, what is my risk management around my applications? How do I demonstrate I built a system well, I've tested it, it's documented, and I keep an eye on whether or not it's performing appropriately? So I'd sort of offer, it's never too early to understand this is a thing you need to approach and you need to solve. And maybe you don't have hundreds or thousands of use cases, maybe you have dozens. But AI governance, before you get into how you could technically solve it with software, you first just need to build some policies. Right. And establish some visibility. And that's the thing everyone can and really should do.
So, one of the things that I'm picking up in there from a gap perspective in my thinking is, we've got all this third-party risk management structure that's out there evaluating the vendors that we use. Cyber, exactly. To what extent is there this gap around what are the right questions and thought processes around AI governance as I'm going through that third-party risk management process? Did I get that right?
Yeah, you did. And I think, so first, the approach that every company should take is not sort of bifurcating models I build versus models I buy.
Okay.
One uniform approach for governance can be applied for whether it's, I'm building it or I'm buying it. When it comes to the vendor space, same as internally, there's a qualitative assessment and there's a quantitative assessment, right? On the qualitative side, you're looking for somebody's thought process. Like, how did you build your system? What data did you use? How do you know you have the right permissions around the data that you're using? In Gen AI, that's a very common story thread, right? Then there's a quantitative piece. And, one of the things we do that is totally solvable, we think it's sort of hard and we do it well, but like the idea of like pen test for AI. Like, what if you could simply just have access to the endpoint of that vendor and you run a test to see how it performs on your data set? We should all want that. That's good. Like, as a CIO, can you imagine like enabling some AI system to automate a critical piece of your business like claims or underwriting, and you haven't been able to like test how it performs under your specific environmental requirements and data sets? And so I think some carriers are scared of how to get vendors to share something proprietary. But I think just like we saw in the cyberspace and we've seen a lot of other software purchasing, first you have to ask, right? And then you have to start to demand, and then you need to make it easy, right? And I think as a maturity, first people need to ask vendors for information. Then we need to sort of start to verify those and figure out ways we can make that sort of buying process more efficient, just like we're trying to do overall with third-party risk.
That makes sense. So do you envision a future, Anthony, where, like we've got, vendors that maintain SOC 2s? And do you envision a future where there's going to be some AI version of that where vendors are going to have to provide certification, maybe even perhaps from a company like yourself that has gone through the rigors of that analysis?
I think I go back and forth as I think about long-term versus near-term, right? I think generally our role at Montar, I don't want to be telling you you're good, you're not good. Right now, our role in the market is enabling our customers to really tell their own story, but to have like an enablement of that, right? So as a solution, Montar aligns with NIST and the NAIC and like New York DFS and Colorado and EU AI Act. We basically help these companies who are great at running insurance, might not be great at AI risk management. Here's an enablement of building your AI and scaling your AI risk management program, right? That's our focus today, is enabling. Do I think there's a future world where there will be some kind of a certification? For sure. But it's pretty downstream, right? Like NIST has some standards, ISO has some standards, but who is qualified to say that this is good or bad? And, as I thought about Montar when I started the company, I definitely thought a lot about there's a future where these systems are going to have to be audited. But as I think about like the dependency to get to that place, first, you need to actually organize what you're doing. Like, how can you audit if there's not access to what is your inventory? Where's your documentation? How's the model performing? So I think first principles, let's help people build their program and create their sort of corpus of good governance. And then whether it's Montar or somebody else in the future, a regulator that wants to examine things, you've got your house in order. I have a boss that used to say, clean your room before you go out and play. And I really think that's where we are, right? Like, let's solve that first. We can worry about certification later, but I could totally see a world where that's happening.
I get it. So, you started pivoting in the direction I wanted to go in, which is, when you think about your value proposition, the Montar value proposition, give our audience a little bit of a perspective of what they could expect to engage to get from you if they engage with you. What's your unique value proposition in terms of your offering?
Well, probably as a CIO, you feel the fatigue of like software everywhere. Everything is SaaS, and I have so many different things. Like, how do I keep track? Our view is like governance, like could be a single comprehensive solution. Whether it's analysts that are covering the space or even our customers, I think part of the reason we're winning is we really offer a very comprehensive solution. The idea being that there are different features of the governance problem that, my opinion, by themselves aren't material enough. Right? Like, I need to do monitoring. Okay. I need to do bias testing. Okay. I need to have policies. Okay. I'd like to have something better than a spreadsheet to do my documentation and collaboration. Okay. Like, you could do each of those pieces, but oh my gosh, how much stuff is already on your agenda? Do you really want to figure out how to stitch all of those together? Right? So the power of Montar really comes in with, we've got really great capabilities across that full spectrum, from defining your program through automating it. Right? And those are connected through a single application. Right now, you can purchase certain modules. So maybe I just want the policy pieces. Versus maybe I need a continuous monitoring and testing capability. But the power of Montar is that we can go to a really large carrier like Progressive or Unum and say, hey, I can offer you a layer of governance that can connect across all stages of the AL journey. Can also connect with your underlying infrastructure. So whether you're in AWS or Azure, whether you're using Databricks or Snowflake, whether you're building a model in Python, or you might be using a legacy sort of actuarial system. Wouldn't it be nice if I could layer one common thing on top of that? And that's what we're offering. And I think that's great. But back to a point earlier, people have to grow into, I think, recognizing that sort of value. And so we really try to meet companies where they are. So maybe somebody wants to start with, hey, just help me build my policies and my controls and my inventory. Great. We'll start there. And as you grow, we'll grow with you. Some other folks are more advanced. They've got thousands of models deployed and they need continuous monitoring and testing. Great. Let's start there. Or maybe only solve that for you. So we're really proud of our team. Like, we started this a long time ago and we kept our heads down for a couple of years building really serious, we say serious software for serious companies. You know, I think this is in a space where you can have sort of a fickle application. This is an important piece of the business. And I'm really proud of what we offer folks. And I think it's quite differentiated, at the moment.
No, that's awesome. At the beginning of the segment, and even a little bit just now, we talked a little bit about the perspective of the CIO. If you're having a conversation with a CIO, and we're chatting coffee about AI and AI governance, what's your advice to CIOs about the role that they should be playing? Back to that ownership question. What's your advice to a CIO around how I should be thinking about the role I should be playing around AI governance? What's that talk track?
Someone recently said something that the CIOs have sort of turned into a traffic control, right? Or air traffic control, right? Like, there's so many different things, and I need to try to help manage prioritization and utilization of resources, right? I think this is one of those areas where there's already so much on your plate. How can you help the business to recognize that, hey, governance, if done correctly, could actually give us like a control mechanism around our AI strategy? It's not just about compliance and regulation. It's about, if we establish a common pattern and framework for how we approach AI projects, how we document them, how we test them, you can now enable these federated business units to have a little bit more autonomy. And I think that is really important in insurance, right? Claims, underwriting, pricing, personal lines, commercial lines, they've tended to very much be able to run their own area. Right. But now we've got AI as sort of a corporate strategy. It's a conversation at the board. Therefore, AI governance has this sort of central enterprise visibility. I think the CIO has a great opportunity to sort of broker, like, hey, let's establish a common pattern and framework. Let's maybe invest in an application that can allow everyone to know what's expected and now go forth. And what you can do. Like, no company needs to be in a position where they're saying no to AI right now. Right? But they also don't want to be on the other spectrum, which is, I'm not giving any guidance or structure to what my folks are doing. And I think that's almost as the expert in trying to provide good structure around technology investments, provide that experience into all of your business partners. Because I think that a lot of, like, maybe a chief claim officer, a chief underwriting officer, they're not as familiar with buying many different software applications, thinking about how these things connect, and they need the CIO's partnership for sure.
I love that. I feel like what you've just kind of crystallized for me is really the concept of governance as an enabler. It's not even so much, it's not a friction point. It's really more so, if we can establish these rules for scalability, for security, now we can open it up to everyone 100%. And it enables that innovation and that creativity within guardrails.
You nailed it. I mean, who likes to spend money on compliance?
Right.
Like, we do it, but who likes to, right? The flip side of that is, how many people are spending a lot of money on AI right now and not realizing the benefits that they expected from those investments? So what if you viewed governance as exactly what you said, by having better structure that informs, how do we prioritize AI projects, right? How do we create visibility and alignment on those? How do we better measure, right, the success and the efficacy of those applications? It seems really obvious and intuitive. I feel like you're saying, like, I'll probably do better with my investments if I force some structure around that. And so we as a company, like, actually really try to lean in on that value problem. Because if we can be a business enabler, right, I think that's a much more exciting space to be, because we all agree that there's great potential for AI to create better efficiency, new product offerings, maybe better equity within the insurance space. And we do need some structure around that. And 100% agree with what you just said. And I hope that more of the market starts to see that opportunity versus maybe being reactive to regulations and compliance.
That makes sense. It does feel that we are being a little bit more proactive, because it's interesting the amount of conversation that is taking place around AI, particularly around AI governance,
Yeah.
as evidenced here, without the regulators pushing it, right? To my knowledge, regulators haven't really started pushing really hard on it, but we're proactively thinking about that now.
Yeah, I feel really privileged to have had the opportunity to be with the NAIC, working with them closely since like 2020, to be really engaged with a bunch of the trade and the different associations supporting this industry. And I do think it's accelerating.
Okay.
But what is accelerating is actually really fundamental expectations for risk management.
Yes.
And
in general,
you could argue that as a CIO, do you ever deploy software that's not tested and validated and monitored and logged? Why would this be any different? And so we are seeing through our customers that they are getting higher performing applications because things that might be obvious to someone who's spent like years building machine learning and AI might not be obvious to the rest of your organization.
Sure.
So if we can help really a lot of junior people deploying high stakes applications to have better understanding of what good looks like, you then get better outcomes.
Yeah.
Right. So yeah, I think that I hope we will be seeing over the next couple of years more people saying, hey, I implemented some good governance and that actually improved. That McKinsey just put something out recently that companies further ahead in the AI governance adoption or implementation are showing 2 to 3x incremental improvement in the AI return on investments, right? So anyone can,
right.
It's beautiful, right? Do whatever you want
exactly.
with story-wise. But I think that more folks are going to see that, and I think we'll start to snowball.
Awesome. Anthony, let's end with this.
Yeah.
Crystal ball it for us. Think about your roadmap, 18, 24-month roadmap at Montar. Think about kind of where you see the evolution of AI governance going.
Yeah.
What's in your crystal ball?
Well, so we've built already quite a bit that automates critical governance steps. So things like data validation, model validation, pre-deployment, post-deployment monitoring and testing, bias testing. These are all automations of a thing that you've defined as a policy and a control with Montar, right? So you have something that says I should do A, B, C, D, E. Oh, Montar then has technology that can automate A, B, C, D, E, right? But a lot of the market's not necessarily ready for the automation. So if I think 24 months forward, more of the market, once they build their programs and their policies, they're going to be looking for efficiencies in that. You have to crawl, walk, run, right?
Sure,
let's first know what we do, make our people do it, build good muscle and good habits. Then let's find the places to automate. So I think, if we go forward, we're going to see more and more companies that with programs implemented, they're now looking to create efficiencies in how can we make it easier for someone to document, to review, and to test. And I think we're continuing to consistently through our R&D team invest in automations of really quality, objective governance. And I think we'll just see more and more pull as people get more mature in this problem space.
Awesome. Fantastic. Anthony, thank you so much for an amazing conversation. This is fantastic. Anthony Habayeb with Montar. And thank you. Thank you for tuning in to ITC Live here at Vegas. And proudly says we're on the set, proudly sponsored by Tint. And we hope we continue to see you and have you tune in for additional sets here from Live at ITC.
Thanks, buddy.
Thank you, man.
Yeah.